Hi everybody, and thanks for coming. And we're going to cover a little bit about where you can make money developing an HTML5 game. My name is Chris Hughes. I'm the co-founder and president of FGL. A little information about FGL is we are the largest broker of indie game developers in the world. We work with over 32,000 indie developers. We actually help them to find publishers, monetize games. We work with over 6,000 publishers. We help in the spaces of native mobile, web, and obviously in the mobile web with HTML5. So firstly, I want to kind of make a few assumptions, define a couple terms that aren't exactly true if you were to dig down deep. One is, what exactly is HTML5? Obviously, from a technical standpoint, there's something very specific it is, but companies and the media at large have decided to basically make it an all-encompassing term. Basically, here, as I'm defining as the HTML5 are games that can be played in mobile and web browsers without a plugin. So that's kind of what I'm going to be coming from, even though technically it means something a little bit different. Also, I want to define what the mobile web is. So when we talk about the mobile web, I have a few things that I basically look at. In the end, it's the experience that you have when you're playing on a mobile device. And I just listed out some things here that are basically kind of standards that you do. These are probably things you all think about when you think of the mobile web. So another thing is why would we develop a game in HTML5? Why would we spend money and time in working in this language as opposed to other maybe mobile or web options that you have? So here I've listed that basically the main reasons that people choose this. One is that it's the most realistic option that you have for focusing on what we call the mobile web. Also, it allows you to reach those markets that you would have anyway if you focused on a platform that was on native mobile. You can port a game very easily. You can wrap a game very easily. There are some companies that are also allowing you to upload straight from HTML5 without having to do any of those types of things. It's not controlled by any one company. Actually, these next two things go together quite well. So one is it's not controlled by any one company, so you're not beholden to working with a large corporation that can then change standards, that can define what you need to do, can charge you for using it. Also, many large companies, because of that reason, are dumping money into it, into the advancement of it, and to making sure that it's successful, so that they're not kind of focused on those things. It's also far less restrictive. So this is why we like the mobile web in general, because there's no really walls into getting people into your games. You can actually have a game played by a link other than going into an app and then having to install the app, having someone send you some either a link to an app store or to basically tell you to search for something. Also, I think that it solves a very particular problem to app stores, which is the discovery problem. And I say that this is solved by divide and conquer. So we see this on the web, whether on Flash portals or other web portals that have large content of games. What I mean by divide and conquer is when players go to find a game on the web, they usually find a portal that they are really resonates with them and the types of games they're looking for. They then stay at that portal. It's something that they go back to regularly to find new content and to discover things that are entertaining to them, as opposed to sifting through a marketplace that's trying to appeal to every single person in the world, and they have to basically find exactly what they're looking for. They know that they found it. And so that there's thousands of these portals out there. People land on each of them, and then they find out, oh, this is something that I like, so I'm going to stick around here. These other two are also important. There's little to no space that you need on your phone. You don't clutter your phone up with apps and so forth. And then social sharing kind of goes with the other thing that I had mentioned before, which is it's very easy to get into these. If you're on Facebook or Twitter and you click a link, you can very easily get into the game with no walls. So I sped through those, and I did that on purpose because I only have limited time. But I do want to focus a little bit more time on the I'm going to take this out so I can move a little more. Basically to talk about where the actual money is, which is why I'm sure you're actually here, because that's the title of the talk. So I'm not going to spend too much time on these two things, but they are important. One is contract work. So there actually is a lot of money out there for contract work. I've talked to several indie developers that say they're making 6 figures just from working with other companies and making custom games for them in the way they want it. To me, this is not as exciting. You're not kind of making your custom IP. You're not building the game that you really love, but there's definitely money out there. It makes sense if you think about a company who is going to try to make a new game on the web or mobile or both. They're going to want to work in a language and a technology that can hit both. Another one is long games, or what we call long-form games. So these are games that are kind of games as a service, very socially integrated, fueled by in-app purchases. These are the ones that dominate the current app stores. These are definitely games. There are some that have already been made. I think that we'll see more of these come up in the near future, and I think there's going to be a lot of money in it, but there's a lot of risk, a lot of development time putting into it, and failure is going to be a big deal. So this is the area that I think is the most interesting in the near term, which are web game portals. So this is a $6.4 billion industry, and as I mentioned, we work with over 6,000 publishers ourselves, and something I ask them consistently is, well, how much of your traffic is coming from a mobile device? And so a lot of these guys are traditional Flash publishers, and so that they don't even look at the web, at the mobile world. They're thinking about their web. They've got Flash games. They're trying to get the audience in from there. And so they go into Google Analytics and they say, oh, I don't know, let me look. And they say, wow, 20 to 30% of my traffic are coming from mobile devices. And so this is various things from people who are getting their phone or tablet for the first time, and they always love going to their favorite site, and now they're going there. And what do they see? They see nothing, because they're all Flash games and they don't work. So these are things that can be captured. This is money on the table that's happening every day. And right now, most portals are not even in this game. And the great thing about HTML5 is that you actually can capture both. So you can get the web traffic that they're getting on top of the mobile traffic. That's the kind of the new money that you're finding. Whereas unfortunately with Flash, you only have the one. And I mentioned here too that the savvy web portals are actually kind of ahead of the game. They do have either an HTML5 portal. At a minimum, they have advertising for other apps and app stores. But really, what we found is if they have advertising on an HTML5 portal where there's a good experience in gaming, that there is retention there. They are making money with that. And just a side note here, I won't get into this too much, but we actually have a portal solution if you're interested, where basically you can set up in a minute and get going with that. So app marketplaces are another place to make money. I want to kind of first mention that what I had talked about before with the wrapping systems that are out there. I actually wanted to make a slide full of like all the tools you could use to help move your game from pure HTML5 to wrap it, and I couldn't even fit it on a slide. And then I felt bad, like, well, I don't want to leave some people out and some people on, so I didn't do it. But if you do a search, there's many of them out there. Many of them are quality. But to me, what's really exciting is that we have these marketplaces that are allowing you to take your pure HTML5 game without even wrapping it and putting it into their traditionally native app marketplaces. So Amazon is a big one here that you can do that. You can just basically send them a URL to your game, and then they pull it in through a custom web view that they've built within their system. So this is great. Tizen also is a really big one where they spent a whole lot of money in acquiring games and licensing games that would be just pure HTML5 and work on their system. And then there's the web ones too, which are actually also interesting. We don't have to just look at mobile, even though that's really the hot spot for HTML5, like Chrome and Mozilla. And then as I talked about the wrapping. So another area that we are actually seeing a lot of movement are in the new marketplaces, the new markets that are coming out. So products are being built, new companies are innovating, and they all need content. And almost all of them want game content. So here's some examples of actual companies we're working with in the restaurant industries, the airplane industries, fast food, TV set-top boxes, wearables. These are all people that we have done deals with who are buying HTML5 games to work on their systems. Because they all basically think HTML5 as I mentioned originally, of what the advantages are. They see them, that they're not beholden to Google or Apple on building on their platforms. They can kind of use it, and it works anywhere. And I just wanted to mention briefly that we've done bulk deals ourselves that have made developers in the six figures. Because these guys will come in and say, look, I'll pay $500 a game, I want 2,000 games, and so we find a developer has a bunch of games, we do the deal, the way the FGL works is we pass almost all that money on to the developer, so they make the money. So this is a really big one. I don't know how much This market can basically sustain itself. I mean, eventually you'll see saturation, but if you're in the game right now, this is really a big opportunity. So what this chart shows is basically what we see from what I'm calling the average HTML5 game. And I know that's subjective, but basically if you take the really high-end ones and the low-level ones that people are just pumping out, in the middle of that, what we see where people are making most of their money. So as you can see, 85% is coming from licensing. And I'm kind of throwing every type of licensing in there, but still, it's basically I'm paying you to be able to use your game on my platform or system. Also, ads is the next big chunk, even though it's significantly less. This is something that I think we'll see the biggest growth in the next probably even year, due to both growing CPMs and value of the ads. I mean, there's a lot more networks now going into video and experimenting with other things that I think are going to work really well, and work well in native, honestly, but are not yet viable on HTML5. We personally have worked with many ad networks, and they're behind. So this is something that's going to grow from that angle, as well as the angle of gamers moving on to the mobile web and onto platforms. So obviously the impressions will go up. So the amount of money that you can plan to make from this should go up. There's also some really almost insignificant chunks of money here from in-app purchases, and I actually call them unlocks here because, to be totally honest, that most HTML5 games at this point are not sophisticated enough yet where they're doing a true, kind of in-app, in-game model that can monetize on a great level. So these are games that are saying, hey, remove ads or unlock extra content. And there is something there. Like, I actually suggest that you do that if you have a game, because there is money there, but it's not as significant as the other areas to make money. The other one, this is probably the biggest one I see people just totally ignore or not think of, which are the developer portals. So this is where you have a huge opportunity as a developer when you make a game to get your name out there, to drive traffic back to yourself and to your site. And you can put ads up on that site. And we've seen this in the web world, and in Flash in particular, make people quite a bit of money. Right now, as you see from this chart, there's not a lot there now, but I think that's mainly due to the impression numbers we're seeing. But basically, if you can drive traffic back to your own site, that's just money on the table that you can grab. The other thing are the app marketplaces. So this is what I mentioned about wrapping your game or working with companies like Amazon to put your game up. It's actually the third largest chunk. It's something that you definitely should be doing. It sometimes takes a lot of effort, and it's probably something you should think about if it's even worth capturing the 4%. But usually it's worth it. And then you have the opportunity to kind of get all those markets, not just the mobile web. So anyone who has done any research in the HTML5 field probably has heard of this developer. He goes by the handle of True Valhalla, and his site is actually up here. It's truevalhalla.com. He has, for 2 years now, worked in the HTML5 world and tracked how much he's made, and been nice enough to share the data of what he's seen. And what's really great about this is it shows how closely his pie chart matches the pie charts that we see with developers we work with. Granted that his numbers are usually a bit higher because he's pretty well established and can really get a lot per game. So first thing you probably want to do is take out the numbers for, he has a book, his website is obviously attracting a lot of users or impressions from people who are actually researching the field, not gamers. So a lot of those are probably a little bit skewed, but you take those out and the percentages work out about the same. Most of the money is coming from licensing. The next one is advertising. So based on all this might be obvious. You could probably glean this yourself from what I've just said, but basically a good indie game plan, this is what we suggest, and it may even be more than indie, but that's primarily who we focus on, are license your games. I totally unbiasedly recommend FGL.com. It absolutely is the easiest place, though, to do this. You put your game up when you have 6,000 people looking at your game to see if they want to make an offer. But obviously, you can work with direct connections. Conferences are good. But this is something you should be doing. You should be going out there. People should be paying you up front to have your game on their system, if not a revenue share deal on top of that. But this is something that should be happening. It's a huge chunk of money for anyone who's successful here. You should be distributing your game outside of that with ads and in-app, in-game purchases if your game so warrants. You should have your own developer portal. just as I said, it's something that you can just make money off of that you would not be there otherwise. And then make sure that you wrap your game and submit it to app stores. So this might be the most interesting chart that I show. This is actual developer earnings that our developers have made. This is money we've paid out to developers. The first 3 months are 100% accurate. The next 3 months may be loosely changed when I make the final version of this. You guys are seeing this before we've released the actual public stats. But they should be pretty close. The trends should definitely be close. It's probably best to look at that and kind of ponder it yourself, other than me kind of like go over the whole thing. But the biggest things to notice here are that I think it's actually pretty interesting that we've seen over $600,000 flow into HTML5 games just this half of the year. So even if things stagnate, which we actually see things go up, this should be over $1 million industry for indie guys. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually it to me is a big deal with games that a lot of people view as like kind of throwaway and technology isn't going to take off. There's money being made, lots of money being made. And in fact, we have a really big, we have over 2,000 native games in app stores, and you can see that it's not that much off. I mean, we've been doing that for years now. And then in the web world, you can see as well. It's like, that's something we've been doing a long time. We've made over $16 million for developers in there, and HTML5 is competing. So this is an area where there is a lot of money coming in. There is interest. It's something that it really kind of deflates a lot of the people who actually kind of talk against HTML5. And it's why we're focusing on it, because honestly, there's no real reason for us to focus on it because we just help developers. But since we see a lot of money coming in, it's something we feel that we need to tell people that there is a way to make a living there. And so I do want to say, though, that keep in mind, if you are into HTML5 development now, whether you know it or not, you're in it for the future. You're not in it for what you're going to make today. It's the hope that it'll actually grow and you'll make more from it. So I want to talk a little bit about the future of HTML5. So in the native space, I talked about kind of how what we're seeing now people are making, but keep in mind this is almost a $16 billion industry and growing. Every chart, I almost made like a blank chart showing something about mobile revenue growth, but everything is up and to the right. Like just basically think anything mobile is up and to the right. Everything's growing, everything's getting bigger. And so the good thing is as I mentioned, the adoption of HTML5 is really high. So even if things stay the same, this will be something that games will be going on there. In fact, I even talked to a handful of developers that have games on Steam in HTML5, and they don't recommend you actually go that route if that's your plan, but it's possible. This is the most exciting area. So what I'm calling the mobile web explosion. And really this is probably the big reason to be in HTML5 because you can do native better. I mean, you can do a native app better in a different language and a different technology, right now anyway. But what you cannot capture on most web platforms and any native mobile platforms are people who are accessing these games from browsers and their mobile devices, going to separate devices, using separate operating systems. You can do this on HTML5. And so basically that mentioned $16 billion industry is now within grasp of a different area of developer now that are focusing on HTML5. So this is actually a really great opportunity. It's also the biggest challenge. So I don't want to stay up here and basically say that this is going to happen and you're going to be rich if you're in HTML5. The reality is that it's a challenge. So there were a few studies that I've read up on over 2012 and 2013 that all of them that I read all came to the same conclusion that people who are accessing apps are doing so 80% more of the time than they're doing anything on the mobile web. And that was in 2012 and in 2013. So basically there's been no change. So there's no movement that we've seen. There's no trend line that you could point to say this is the future, it's where it's going. This is something that has to be kind of cajoled and encouraged on top of the assumption that there actually is going to be a change and that consumer behavior will change. So that is it's the biggest strength and the biggest weakness of the whole thing. Will it happen? If it happens, there's going to be a ton of money involved. And then I just kind of mentioned in here that the sponsorship could also be resurrected through this model, which is a whole other group of a way to make money, which is basically being able to put your branding as a publisher into a game, spread that game around the web, and draw traffic back to you. This is something that in the Flash world, millions of dollars flowed through for this, and I think could happen on HTML5. It absolutely cannot happen on native, and we've tried it, and other people have tried it. So that's kind of exciting that could happen, and that's a very, especially indie-friendly way to make money. Also, so this is really kind of a replication of a slide that I had before, but it definitely needs to be mentioned in the future, that all of these different marketplaces and these new markets that are coming up in restaurants and so forth, they're going to need content, and there's going to be new ones, and they're going to need people to play games and get and access them easily. So basically, this is just kind of saying that that's a big future as well. So in conclusion, the great thing about everything I've talked about is it's in its infancy. So almost everyone I talk to who's tried HTML5, they're either in one of two camps. So either tried it a couple years ago and it just tanked. And we are one of them. So we tried it 2 years ago when it kind of was hyped and it just went nowhere. A lot of people left it. They still have a bad taste in their mouth from that. But now what we're seeing is kind of a resurrection, and I really feel fortunate that we're involved in that we've seen the money flowing in. We've seen the developers really come a long way to making better games and the tool sets and the technology. And so this is still very young, even though some people might think it's kind of been around for a while. It's not. So that's exciting to me, that all these numbers that we see are only going to get better. And then also the adoption and advocacy towards HTML5 has grown a lot. I know the communities I'm involved in, I mean, there's HTML5 forums out there that they've gone from 0 to, 10,000 members in months. And so there's a lot of interest. There's companies involved in dumping money into it. And so this is really exciting. So if you're involved in this is definitely a very exciting market. So any questions?
Oh, hold on one sec.
Oh.
So I'm a UI UX and web designer, and from my understanding, HTML is a visual markup language, and I'm just wondering, how do you make a game with just purely HTML5, or do you have to combine with JavaScript and other language?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And that's where, and one of the first slides I had where I was saying that I'm really taking a broad interpretation of HTML5, that basically what people refer to HTML5 is very a non-technical term. What they say is like, yeah, it's JavaScript, it's WebGL, it's CSS, it's HTML, it's all those things together. And kind of maybe a deeper even question within your question is, it is very hard to build a game using these technologies and make sure they work across all devices and all platforms. It's not easy. I have to actually give a lot to the Flash kind of architecture, that the one thing you have is you know what you're going to get. You don't have that. But the advantages are it works everywhere.
So what would you say is the most common complaint developers have when they're taking part in HTML5 development? What do they run into? What's their biggest trial?
Yeah, well, there's kind of two sides to it. One is the actual development of it. I mean, luckily, a lot of the tool sets are catching up, but it's always been hard to make sounds play correctly. Making it fit the right form factor is always harder. The dimensions of a phone. So this is something that's always been a really pain for developers, that in other areas that they've been able to accomplish easily. On the money side, it's really just where to go. Where do I make money? I mean, it's been obvious in other areas. On mobile, it's figured out. On web, it's pretty much figured out. On HTML5, they don't know. I mean, where are the companies I go to who are interested? Where do I distribute my game? Where can I even put them on native apps? Like, these are the types of questions that I usually get.
Yeah, it would be interesting for a developer to take a look at common places where they found Flash games around the world on different portals and places, and who leveraged them, and then reintroduce that same type of business model. And I think that's what Chris is talking about here, is that licensing, the revenue share, all of these approaches that we were probably sitting on a stage 10 years ago talking about how to do that with Flash games. The same thing holds true with HTML5, and I think his presentation is pretty powerful, is saying, their opportunity exists out here to do that. It's just a matter of pushing and going out there. In my experience, I saw a lot of businesses are thinking HTML first. So Flash is not a consideration anymore, and if they're going to put content on the web, they want to think HTML5 first. So it's a golden opportunity, and I think you're going to see those revenue numbers that Chris showed do nothing but increase over time. Anyone else have any questions? In the back. We don't want to hold anyone back. Thanks, man.
Hello. So I was a Flash studio, and then eventually moved to different frameworks. And I've been doing HTML5 for the past 2 years, so I know the problems there. Um, this is exciting to me because typically we've been doing HTML5 HTML5 game development services, well, as a service. And I really wanted to get into mobile game development, and I got into this talk by accident. You're not even listed in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks
so,
for coming.
yeah, and it was great. So I feel bad because I missed that part about Amazon being supportive. I'm not sure. I'm sorry to everyone else here, but I kind of missed out on that.
Sure.
Maybe you can expound for me.
Yeah, totally. And it probably deserves a little expansion anyway because it's very exciting. So now you can actually submit HTML5 games straight to Amazon. We actually have a partnership with them ourselves where we help to get special attention to games that are HTML5. So, in fact, just last week we had an entire ad slot on their main banner that showed all the games that went through us that were HTML5. And so what they do is they pull it in through a web view. It's actually a custom web view that they've built kind of on top of the Android web view that can just pull your game in straight from a URL. So you don't have to wrap it. You don't have to worry about any of the challenges of making an APK and what am I doing in that process. So that's kind of what they're doing. So it's really to me that's an exciting. They're kind of the first big marketplace to take that step. Okay. Oh, great. Hey, yeah, thanks. Okay.
Yeah, wondering, like Alexander from Soft Games. So,
Hi.
but the biggest question we always get is like how much money actually really like a developer gets for like a game. Probably you can share the information you got on FGL.
Yeah, absolutely. So it depends. I mean, and obviously I've seen you. You're very active in the community, and I appreciate that. So it's really dropped a lot in the recent past. So there were companies who were spending really a premium for games, for licenses, for non-exclusive licenses or exclusive licenses. I mean, paying in the area of like $4,000, $5,000 per license, sometimes for a non-exclusive license. So, which was great. But now, obviously, as markets happen, more games have flooded the market, more developers are building it, and so that price has dropped. So to give you like an actual what like you could expect to, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong on the question, but of what you should pay for a license, I mean. So what a developer should expect, I mean, I guess it goes either way. So what a developer should expect per license. If it's a non-exclusive license where there's not a lot of work involved, what we usually say is like $500 to $1,000 per game. So that's kind of like what you would see in an average game. Obviously, if you have sub-quality games or really high-quality games, you should demand more. And if you're getting an exclusive license, they should be paid quite a bit more. So from our perspective, those are kind of like the good ranges for it.
Yeah, and I would even say I was licensing HTML5 games for the last couple of years. You can sometimes demand a premium for HTML5 since there's not a lot in the marketplace or there's not a lot of quality in the marketplace. So I would even raise that number a bit because if you have good quality content, I think the opportunity does exist. And some of the premium brands and non-traditional places that he was mentioning before might be those places to think about.
Yeah, and it really depends on what the other terms are as well. So a lot of times if someone just wants you to take out branding and put it on their site, like that's not a big deal. It's not a lot to do. If they're wanting you to replace branding, put their branding in, put in some custom ads, like that adds a whole other. So it's something that developers just need to calculate in their head to say, well, it's going to take this much work to do it. It's worth this much to me. Actually, not to push ourselves too much, we have an entire system that does this for developers now, where if you upload your game to us, we will handle that entire process. So if someone just comes in, clicks a button, and you just get money. We automatically insert their branding, insert any ads they ask for, any API. So that's a way that we're trying to like really streamline that process.
I think we're out of time. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Chris.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.